The Quakes preseason is just about wrapped up with the conclusion of the Coachella Valley Invitational. Having played a total of 5 games so far, and with one left before the start of the 2025 season, we figured it's about time to start talking about what we've seen. My name's Kevin, and I'm joined by Luis. Together we're the Quakesaholics, and in this video we'll be evaluating the team's recent preseason performances. Luis, how are you doing?
Good. Yeah, interesting to see the Coachella Invitational. The last match wasn't so great for anyone that's been keeping up with that, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, as they say, not much to look into when it comes to preseason. At least nothing to look into too deeply, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so to go over all the matches, we started off with 2 closed-door games, one down at LAFC, which was a 1-1 draw, and then we hosted Monterrey at home, and that was a 3-0 victory. It's also closed doors. Then in terms of public matches, the Quakes did go down to Indio, California to Coachella, and we played Portland in the first game, which was a 1-2 loss. Then we had another loss against the Red Bulls, that was 0-1. And then the culmination was a loss against Chicago, 1-5. Quite disappointing, but at least we got to see the Quakes after so many months.
Yeah, definitely disappointing. Yeah, I think overall, like we saw last season, hopefully these things can get weeded out, but that defensive instability is still there. Interesting to look at Bruce Arenas, his first initial impressions that we have of what the Earthquake's going to look like under him. It can be easy to want to forget how bad this team was defensively. When you look at some of the statistics from last season, I mean, it's not pretty to look at. Earthquakes were probably third to last for chances conceded in the league. This is Bruce Arena, and to quote an article by the American Soccer Analysis, even without taking into the account the phenomenal goalkeeping the Revs received during his tenure from Matt Turner and Petrovic, Arena's defensive structure had them giving up only 1 XG per home game and 1.6 XG per away game. League average shot stopping would translate to around 44 XG for the season, which is among the 5 best defenses in 2024. So just goes to show that Bruce Arena is capable of, at least historically, making teams more defensively sound. And yeah, but with that being said, of course, that also is going to depend on the personnel that you have.
Yeah, so the results, safe to say, are massively disappointing, but like you said earlier, the point of preseason isn't just the results. There's a lot more to it, and especially with this being Bruce's first time with the Quakes, I think my expectations for Coachella were a little bit more tempered. I was mainly looking for experimentation, wanted to see different lineups, not just in shape, but also in how the shape gets filled out with personnel. I wanted to see the drafted players and new signings get as many minutes as possible. And I think a really big question was how Chicho and Josef were going to be able to play together, if at all. And by the final match, I think what I most wanted was to have a formation and lineup figured out and get some sense of like, okay, how are we actually going to be playing in MLS? And I will say that most of those things Bruce did check off. I was happy to see that the lineups were very different from game to game. Like the first game, we had like a 4-3-3 formation, which was a mix of players that you would expect to be starters and some players that maybe you wouldn't expect to regularly see. There was a lot of free roam for Espinoza, Hernan, Chicho, Josef in terms of attack. It seemed like everyone had license to kind of just go wherever on the field that they pleased. Then for the second game against Red Bulls, we switched to what looked more like a 5-3-2, and that was really full of names that you wouldn't really expect for us to start in MLS, which I think is good. More rotation is always great, especially with the frequency of these games. And then by the third game, we did see a list of players that I would expect to go out and start for an MLS game. Really, the only name that we didn't see was Rodriguez. We saw Daniel Munoz instead. But the formation was definitely something that we're not accustomed to. It was more of like a 5-3-2 when we're defending, and then sort of like a 3-5-2 in attack. So lots of variety. I think that was good. I was happy to see how Bruce allocated time for all the players. But in terms of how those players were utilized, I'm not totally confident at the end of this preseason. And yeah, the last result was definitely a slap in the face. The results don't matter, but losing 5-1 is unacceptable under any circumstance. I think some of the goals were definitely avoidable. I think, for example, like the goal that they scored after Hernan got fouled in a regular MLS game, probably VR would overturn that. There was 2 penalties called, which we don't really see that too often. They are mistakes, but when you're down so many goals, it's easy to try to just do a late tackle to stop another goal, and then it leads to another penalty. So I don't fault all the goals, but it still is disappointing.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely unexpected as well. I think the first 2 matches, they weren't perfect, but I thought that we competed well. And yeah, to give up 5 in one half was just unexpected.
Yeah, the first 2 games, the results weren't great, but I do think that the team played well, and that's at least one good takeaway that I had from those two.
Yeah, and like you said, right? I wasn't able to catch too much of the Chicago game, but from what it sounds like 5-1 was a bit harsh of a scoreline relative to how the team actually played.
Yeah, I would agree. A lot of those goals were in really quick succession. It's also, you have to keep in mind that like when you're down 2-3 goals in a preseason game, you're not going to play with the fire of like, okay, we have to rescue this result. You know that this result really doesn't mean much. You're probably treating every state of the game as if it was 0-0 and trying to stick to the game plan and executing the game plan. You're not going to go crazy out all on attack. And I understand the players' attitudes. You don't want to get injured. That would be the worst thing to happen. So yeah, it's understandable. It's just frustrating as a fan.
Also interesting, as you noted earlier, the free roam in the attacking line. I think it's going to be a big question to see kind of where Espinoza fits into all of this. I understand that Bruce Arena, again, has that defensive, might have those defensive priorities. But at the same time, Espinoza is someone who was our offense last season. So that's going to be interesting to see. At the same time, Chicho and Josef, I think if you're in the loop of the Earthquakes, you'll remember the press conference where they were asked why, who's going to start, and Chicho responded with, why not both? And I think that's what we're going to expect. That's what we're going to see from Bruce Arena. So I think that's going to be a big question going into the season, is how is Espinoza going to fit into all this if it's a given that both Chicho and Josef are going to be starting.
Yeah, Espinosa's role was definitely a wrench that I was not expecting this whole mix. But I think it is part of Bruce's reconstruction of the defense. And so I'll give Bruce time. I would prefer Espinosa play up top. But if he thinks that wing back is the solution, then, I mean, Bruce is calling the shots. In terms of actually building that defensive powerhouse, what do you think still has to change? And do you have any concerns with the existing personnel or how they're being used?
Again, this is a team that has pretty much broken records for its defensive instability. And I think that that's going to be a major issue and a major concern for Bruce Arena. So I think that we've always kind of seen Espinoza as a player that can go back and defend. That's also something that we've seen. No one ever really saw Benji as his starting fullback, but I don't think many people had too many complaints with him after he did, right? So we'll have to see how that develops. But a big part of this equation is the fact that Bruce Arena is going to have 3 center backs. That's what we saw, if I'm not mistaken, for the majority of the second game in the preseason and for all of the Chicago game. And, I think that also kind of is in alignment with some of the off-season acquisitions that the team has made. In the first round of the draft pick, the Earthquakes picked up 2 players, Max Floriani and Reed Roberts. And interesting, to kind of go back to that article that I was reading and referencing from the American Soccer Analysis, is that these players are kind of profiled as elbow backs. They're players that would be great for a back 3 or 3 center backs, because they're great as they're kind of that hybrid role between a fullback and a center back. So, if there's a moment where Espinoza is going up the pitch, maybe one of those, the right center back can kind of go into that area on the outside of the field and cover well. So I think that it makes sense, that it's good to see that those drafts are in alignment with this back 5 or 3, depending on, how the ebb and flow of the game is. And I think it's something that we'll have to see. I don't think we've seen a back 5 for the Quakes in a while, at least as like a long-term predominant philosophy. But yeah, I think that if those draft picks do well, then it'll be exciting to see. But at the same time, the center backs that we have currently, whether that be for tactical reasons from previous managers or whatnot, whatever combination we had previously just didn't seem to be working. And hopefully just one more guy in that defensive line could start to make that defense a lot more solid.
To be more optimistic, is there anything from the squad that left you surprised about these 3 games?
Yeah, definitely. I think that for one, Nico Shakiris looked pretty good, I would say. He seemed to be getting a lot further up the field. I think he even had a shot on goal or a few pullbacks or cutbacks at the byline, which is good to see. And then also, I didn't even know who he was because he had no name on his back, but Nick Fernandez, he looked pretty good. I thought he played well. He connected well. I remember when he came on for one of the preseason games, he looked vibrant, energetic, and he wanted to pass forward, one touch a lot of the time. So that tempo, that technique was there. And year over year, college soccer is becoming an increasingly better source for talent. So I think it'll be interesting to see if hopefully he gets a full-time contract and who knows, maybe get some minutes with the first team.
Yeah, and then I think to add on to that, I was excited to see Chicho and Josef play together. It's something that we've been talking about for weeks now, and to finally see them play in black and blue was well, I guess red and white because we were using the away jerseys. But anyways, it was nice to see them play. It was nice to see Josef. It seemed like Josef had a really easy time integrating with the team. I saw him connecting a lot of passes, and I mean Chicho did his job. It's to be ready to score when you get the ball, put the ball in the back of the net, and I think it did do that. So excited for them. Excited for the last game against St. Louis. I don't know if they'll televise that. Hopefully they do. And most of all, excited for the 2025 season to start in just over a week now. So yeah, that's all we had for the preseason. Stay tuned. We will have a couple more videos before the start of the season, and hope to see you there. Thanks.